everyone, Julie here and welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today I'm going to take this portrait of model Emily Reinhardt and I'm going to paint over the top of it with the mixer brush. So I'm going to start where I always start, and I'm going to make a duplicate copy because I'm just going to keep the background copy as it is. If there's any cleanup or retouch or anything like that I need to do, I do to that copy. I then drop the opacity a little bit of that down to say about 95, 98%. Then I put on a new fresh layer. I grab my mixer brush, and I've got a few different mixer brushes, but I really like the complexion brush too, and you can find the mixer brush kit. I'll put the link down below. And I zoom in quite close and I start painting. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to start on the eyes, and I always work in the direction that everything goes. So for instance, on the eye, you've got the striations in the eye and things like that. The pupil, I work around the eye because, or the iris, you know what I mean, the black bit in the middle. So that I work through that. Then the actual eye, you've got those lines, so I work from the center out or the out to the center. I don't just go round and round in circles. I follow those to try and get as much detail in the eye as I can. Then the next thing I do is just start working my way around the eyes, painting in the eyelashes, the whites of the eyes, all the way around the eyes. There's quite a lot of detail, and if you zoom out when you paint it in, you can lose some of that. So I paint in the eyelashes and then I come back in and paint in between and around them. Then I move over to the other eye and just repeat everything all over it again. I then zoom out just to double check everything looks okay, and then I can start working my way through the face. So there's no real sort of right or wrong as where you can start. I generally tend to work from the eyes out, do the nose, the cheeks, the forehead, the eyebrows, round through the lips, etc. Be careful to pay a little bit of attention around the mouth area, especially with the lips, because you don't want the skin to bleed into the lips and the lips to bleed into the skin. So sometimes it pays just to spend a little bit more time. Things like the eyes, the nostrils, the mouth, they really can define a face. So you don't want to make them appear a different shape to what they actually are. When you're doing the eyebrows, sometimes I find it's easier to rotate the image, but always draw them in the direction that they are growing. likewise, when it comes to the hair, always paint it in the direction that the hair is flowing. So you don't necessarily have to start at the top and work your way through, but I can often find that more helpful. I'll go in with a bigger brush. If there's a hair part, I can start there. Remember, the hair part itself is going to be a little bit of skin, but then you have got hair, and following the way that the hair falls and grows is much nicer than if you just scribble it all in. I decided before I got too far ahead with my hair that I would come in and paint in the background. Now, it is a mottled sort of brown backdrop, which has got sort of varying different colors in it, but I just decided that I was quite happy to sort of make it more just like a muddy color. I can always come back in and add some more details in later. I'm still on the same layer. I'm currently still using the same brush. I frequently paint a lot of my images with just the same brush. So now my background is done. I come back in and I finish up the details on the face. And go back to doing the hair. Just remember, on the face you can do sort of soft swirly strokes, but on the hair really need to do it in the direction that the hair is growing. So now we get to the clothes. Again, I tend to paint these in the direction that the folds are. If you have got creases and folds in your clothes, then it pays to paint in those and then move around. Where you've got hair over the top, I would paint around the hair and then come back in and paint the hair in over that. Where you've got fabric that is against your backdrop, I would run in a line along the edge of the backdrop. For now, I'm leaving the detail out on the sleeves and the neck of the dress, and I'll come back to those in a minute. It always pays to just have a little look around, make sure you've got everything, check that you're happy with everything. I then went and changed my brush, so I switched over to a background brush after I just painted in a few little details on the necklace and fixed up a few things on her skin. So this is where I come in and I changed over to my smoke blender brush and I'm tapping. Just tap, 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 tap. It still looks a bit painterly, but it preserves most of the detail when you tap in over the top. And I did that for pretty much all of the Celtic design on the neck and the sleeves. Okay, so now that I've got most of my image painted in, I'm going to come into my Photoshop actions and I'm going into my cinematic actions and I'm going to run all three of them. So there's the cinematic, the dodge and burn and the high pass. It doesn't really matter what order you play them in, they will do the same thing. So they will do a dodge and a burn layer, they will do a high pass layer, and then they will do the cinematic actions. If you did do them from the base layer, you just need to grab them and move them up the stack. Next, I'm going to go to my dodge and burn. So you've got dark, which is your burn layer, and light, which is your dodge layer. They're basically curve adjustments. The dark one is your shadows pulled down and the light one is your highlights pulled up. I then grab a soft white brush and I start going and painting in first all my shadow areas. Then I can come back in and repeat with all my highlight areas. So once I've done my dodge and burn, I make sure I go into the properties of the layer mask and I set my feather to around about 50 pixels. It makes a much nicer transition. Next we have the high pass, and if I zoom in on that, you can see where it puts the detail back in on the skin and all the rest of it. Now, depending on how strong you want it, you may not want it quite so strong. So you don't have to have it on linear light. You can choose overlay or soft light. You can keep it on linear light, but you can bring the opacity down. So it's up to you which way you want to go. You can also as well put a layer mask on there or an adjustment mask on there, and you can mask off any of the areas that you don't want. So zooming back out, having a look at everything, I think I've got everything pretty well done. You can just turn this layer off and see all the areas that you've missed, and then you can come back in and do a little bit of a tidy up. Make sure you're painting on the right layer. This is where sometimes it is helpful to name your layers. So if I come back in, I can turn this opacity down, then come back into my paint layer and go through and make sure that I grab all the rest of those that I had missing. The next ones in the cinematic actions are lookup tables. So I have got, I'm just going to turn that up so it's not quite so distracting. So the lookup tables, this is teal, orange plus contrast, which is, I use these all the time. This is why I made this action. So what I have got is that set to soft light at 25%. The next one I have, which is foggy night, again, soft light at 25%. If I set it at full at 100%, that's what the action actually does to the image. So don't be frightened when you put an action on and you think, oh wow, I really don't like that. Try dropping the opacity down. Try changing the blend mode, whether it's lighten, color dodge, soft light. See what works for your image. Now, I find sometimes that not all of these actions will work, especially this one. This is edgy amber, and I find if there's already any warmth to the image, this is too much, so I can turn that off. The next one is a color fill. If you've seen any of my other videos with the action, you probably already know this. It's just a blue solid layer set to exclusion at 26%. or 25%. I can change the color of that. If I want to say pick up the green in her dress, I can do that, and changing the color will change the outcome of what you got. So I'm just going to pick that green in her dress, maybe make it a bit darker, And that's it. From here, all I need to do, if I want to, is attach a texture. I'm just going to go into my libraries. I'm going to grab one of my grungy textures and I'm just going to stretch it to fit. I'm going to select soft lay. Now I don't necessarily like what I did with the color, so I'm going to do Control U and bring up my hue saturation panel, and I'm going to take the saturation out, so I don't want any color in it at all. I just want the texture, but it's probably just a little too much texture, so I'm just going to soften it off a little bit. And there you have the final piece. So I've taken it from this to something much more painterly. I hope you enjoyed following along with that walkthrough and speed edit, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.